France is taking a big step towards getting back to normal. Prime Minister Edouard Philippe has announced further easing of lockdown measures starting on June the 2nd. The entire country, except for the Île-de-France region around Paris, is now classified as green. That means Parisians will need to live under stricter conditions than the rest of France for now. People elsewhere, however, can move freely instead of being limited to trips within 100 kilometres. Cafes, bars and restaurants will also be allowed to get back to business. Well, joining me now to discuss this is journalist David Chazan, who's in Paris. David, well, I know lots of people here were on tenterhooks as the Prime Minister was about to speak. What else did he have to say?
Well, he said something that'll come as a huge relief to many French people, which is that the ban on travelling more than 100 kilometres from your home is also being lifted just in time for holidays, so people can now go ahead and book summer holidays. Of course, the French government's warned that international travel may remain difficult for some time, and it's urging them to holiday in France. Now, as you said, restaurants and cafes are going to be allowed to reopen from Tuesday, that's June the 2nd, except that in the Paris area where I am, where the virus is still being transmitted at a higher rate than most other places in the country, cafes and restaurants will only be able to serve customers on pavement terraces like this one. So this cafe, for example, will not be allowed to accept customers indoors for the time being. Now, Mr. Philippe praised the French for, by and large, observing the lockdown restrictions, and he said that's what's allowing this further loosening of the rules now. And he gave details about how theatres, gyms, swimming pools, etc. will all progressively be allowed to reopen during June. Cinemas won't reopen until the 22nd, but gyms and swimming pools and sports centres will reopen as early as next week in the green zone and on the 22nd of June in the orange zone, which of course includes Paris.
It's overall good news, but there were some bad news for France today because it confirmed these high unemployment figures. Of course, the economy has been very hard hit. It was already sort of under the cosh, as it were. So how quickly might we expect, a bounce back given these restrictions?
Well, the government's certainly hoping that reopening all these various industries and activities will give the economy a desperately needed boost. But the bad news today was that it was confirmed that unemployment has risen to its highest level since 1996. France now has 4.5 million people out of work, and that does not include the nearly 13 million people who have been furloughed from their jobs, and they're having the state pay 80% of their salaries for the time being. So all of that remains very difficult. And of course, France, like a lot of other countries, has ploughed billions of euros of state money into propping up companies, into paying those wages to workers who've been furloughed. So things are likely to be quite difficult for some time to come. Of course, joblessness had been going down before the coronavirus crisis, partly perhaps as a result of President Emmanuel Macron's economic reforms, but that has all now gone under the effect of the coronavirus, and I think we're going to see the economic fallout continuing for many months to come.
David Chazan there, looking ahead to next week when those lockdown restrictions are being lifted across most of France. Thank you.